15. All right. Good morning to those in the West and good afternoon to those in the East. It's Gary Morris from this series podcast, the Level Up series. Listen, I am absolutely delighted here to have an amazing guest, a guest that represents the Terry Fox Foundation and the Terry Fox Research Institute. For many, many years. He is the brother to someone we all know very well as proud Canadians, Terry Fox. Darrell Fox is with me today, and we're going to talk about everything regarding the Marathon of Hope, the different foundations, the research institutes. And we're going to get just sort of a look back on where this journey began so many years ago and the impact and changes that it's had on so many lives along the way. As a Port Coquitlam resident, still to this day, I grew up in the hometown of Terry Fox. And to say this individual, to call me a Fox fan, would be an understatement. To say this individual had an impact on my life would be an understatement. He has throughout North America, especially in Canada. So before I jump in with Darrell today, I want to quickly read his bio. Darrell Fox is the younger brother of Terry Fox, for whom the Terry Fox Foundation and the Terry Fox Research Institute are named. In 1980, at the age of 17, Darrell joined Terry and Terry's best friend, Doug Alward, on his Marathon of Hope journey that started in St. John's, New Brunswick. As Terry's younger brother, Darrell has had a long history of involvement with the legacy founded by Terry. In 1990, Darrell became the provincial director for the Terry Fox Foundation in British Columbia. In 1994, he moved to the national office in Toronto, Ontario, where he served 2 years as the assistant national director and then national director of the Terry Fox Foundation from January 1996 until June 2009. To date, and this is astounding, the foundation has raised over $850 million, almost $1 billion for cancer research worldwide. Today, Darrell serves as the Terry Fox Research Institute's board of directors, and is a senior advisor to the Institute. He's a holder of the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal. Darrell continues to be involved in projects and activities related to Terry Fox and his legacy. Darrell, good morning, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, Gary. If I'd known that I'd be looking at images of myself in short shorts and long hair, I probably would have passed. But great to be here, nonetheless.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, boy, those images. There's a lot of stories to be told in those images. You were also young back then. Absolutely, just incredible.
Gary, are you suggesting I'm not young anymore?
Yeah, you are. No, actually, I was quite surprised when we were chatting before the show. Actually, how youthful and exuberant you actually still really are all these years later. But nonetheless, it's great to have you. We're delighted. I want to maybe just before we start talking about Terry, the journey, and all the lessons that we can learn along the way. I want to quickly maybe just get you to explain to us the difference between the Terry Fox Foundation and the Terry Fox Research Institute, so everyone, as we work through this today, has a broad understanding of how they work together.
Sure. Well, the Terry Fox Foundation has existed since 1988. In fact, prior to 1988, there were obviously Terry Fox runs. Terry passed away in 1981, and there was a run in September of that year. But during the first 7 years of the annual Terry Fox run, we were aligned with the Canadian Cancer Society. Those involved with the run at that time, and obviously Mom played a very pivotal role. Mr. Sharp, president of Four Seasons Hotel, was also very active, saw that there was potential for growth, and they felt that it was necessary to become independent. So the Terry Fox Foundation was created in 1988, and that first year as an independent identity, revenue almost doubled. So I think it was a wise move. Mm-hmm. And the run continued to grow over the years as well, to a point where we get to the 2000s and the 2005 Terry Fox run, which was the 25th anniversary, and the foundation raised close to 50 million, almost doubling what they had raised the previous year. Wow. And what we've always done when we've been in this position where we had resources, we've always gone to the research community to look at potential opportunities. And one of the things that they suggested was that we were at a point now where we could actually create our own institute. So the Terry Fox Research Institute was created in 2007. So the foundation is responsible for fundraising. The Terry Fox Research Institute is responsible for allocating dollars raised by the foundation to research projects across the country. It's been quite a legacy. We've been fortunate with the Terry Fox Research Institute to recently receive, I say recently, but it's actually almost been 2 years, but this is the process that it takes when you're going and dealing with government. We've received $150 million from the federal government to launch the Marathon of Hope Cancer Center network. And the focus will be on precision medicine. So that's really exciting, but it's also a challenge because along with having this additional funding that we will receive over the next 5 years, the foundation has to raise, along with our partners, a match of $150 million as well. So we're not shy of challenges around here, and we look forward to that opportunity over the next 5 years.
Yeah, good for you guys. Congratulations on all that amazing work. I'd like to go back to the early days and talk about Terry as a kid before he got sick. And, you know, obviously I've been in Poco and have heard and know a little bit about the family. Obviously, there was 4 siblings, you know, mom and dad, all very athletic, rambunctious family. You know, maybe tell us sort of what those early years were like and what Terry was like as, you know, as a teenager.
Yeah, well, you know, we always want to start there and share the story of Terry. And the reality is that he was just an average kid. I mean, I know that surprises people in light of what he ended up accomplishing, but he was average in every way. He was an average student. He was an average athlete. Nothing came easy for Terry. But one thing that he had an abundance of was determination, a never give up attitude, which I think we all have as Fox family members, but Terry seemed to have a monopoly on it. To give you an example of his determination, Terry tried out for the grade 8 basketball team, and we talked earlier, Gary, about his coach at the time, Bob McGill. Well, after the first practice, Coach McGill came up to Terry and said, "Terry, give it up. You will never make
wrestling," I think he said.
Yeah. Try wrestling because you will never. You're uncoordinated. You're too short. Wrestling is your sport. Well, Terry took that as a challenge, and McGill knew a little bit about Terry and felt that Terry would respond to a challenge, and that's exactly what Terry did. He was going to prove to Coach McGill that he could play the game. So the next morning and for every day thereafter, that's all Terry did was practice. He practiced and he practiced and he made the team. And Gary learned a very valuable lesson during that period that, you know, do not believe what other people think and say about you, but believe in yourself and you're capable of incredible things. So that was a very pivotal moment in Terry's life back in Poco.
Well, if I look back on that, and I know a little bit about that story because Bob McGill, when I got to that same high school, he was actually principal. Right. And I spent lots of time in the principal's office because I was also one of those kids that was very average. And, you know, my everything, you know, nothing was easy for me. And, you know, so I would act out and end up there. So I got to know Bob fairly well. I still see him at the golf course here occasionally out at Pitt Meadows. But it's interesting because what you said, and it's something that Terry has said, and you've built this entire campaign around it. But, you know, one of the quotes that Terry said, very, very young, that has just traveled worldwide now is anything's possible if you try. And I think Terry, you know, his most famous words, in my opinion, were just try if you try. I'd love to hear your thoughts around that.
Well, I believe in those words, and I've tried to adhere to those words all my life as well. I mean, my feeling is limitations are self-imposed. Like we are all capable of doing incredible things. The only thing that prevents us is ourselves. And that's what Terry learned. He learned that from his experience growing up and the basketball experience. He would look around at his peers and he knew he wasn't as talented or as smart as those around him, but he was successful because of one thing, and that was this never give up attitude. And he always tried harder, he tried, you know, and so that's something that is very much a part of our messaging, has been there. But I mean, I wish I could have thought of this, but it's just so cool that the word try is in Terry's name. I mean,
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
like
When did somebody
it's
figure that out? Was that figured out in the early days or much later?
much later, Gary. It's recent, and I feel like I feel a little disappointed that I didn't come up with that idea. So kudos to the person that did, but
Yeah.
it's brilliant, and it just fits so well with who we are and who Terry was.
Yeah. So you go back to those days, and he was up every morning and every afternoon, and he was shooting hoops and trying to become better. And his buddy Doug would just pound him on every game of 1-on-1 or 21 or whatever they were playing. He got better and got better and got better. And McGill had this thing, and he had it even when I was there. He never cut a single player, but he made it very clear you could be on the team, but you wouldn't play. He started the top 12 players, and then by Terry's junior year in high school, grade 11, he actually was on the senior team and was one of those 12 players. And he went from the worst kid on the team, probably, or maybe not the worst kid, but someone who didn't have any natural talent to speak of. And he tried so damn hard that he made the starting team. Amazing.
It is amazing, and you're sharing the story, Gary, perfectly. It's the story we share when we have a chance to speak to students. Is how he went from being the worst player to the best, and all through effort and hard work. And he shared co-athlete of the year with Doug Alward. Doug was an accomplished runner, and Terry threw basketball, rugby, and soccer. So it was cool in light of what lay ahead for the two young men that they would share that athlete in grade 12.
And how was the family? Was the family a regular family? Were you typical, brothers and sisters that were, sort of wrestling and fist fighting? Did everybody get along good?
No.
Sounds like my family.
It was Gary. It's a typical family. Like we were competitive. We were a competitive family. Nothing was given to us. We had to work to have spending money. One of the summer projects or jobs that we had was picking berries out off of Prairie Avenue, going to Emo's place. And I hated it. I just despised it. I had to ride my bike with Fred and Terry, and we were allowed in because we were such good pickers that Emo would let us in at 7:00 in the morning when the berries were wet, so they weighed more, so you got more money. But because we cleaned a tree, clean, he wanted us, and he allowed us to do that. It would take all day to make $3.20. I despised it, but that's how I bought my next bike. But those are the values that mom and dad shared with us is, nothing's going to be given to you. You have to work hard. And I think obviously Terry took that to another level with the Marathon of Hope.
Yeah. So before we sort of jump into that, guys, this book recently came out, Forever Terry. Incredible book. It is short stories of some amazing individuals, from Darrell, yourself, and Michael Bublé, and Bobby Orr, and Tom Cochran, and Doug Alward, who was Terry's best friend, and Darrell Sittler, and 75 more or 80 more of really, really, really proud supporters of Terry. Anyone who's making a comment on social media, a comment to us on the screen, asking a question, we're going to ship you out a copy of this book. Same as we do every podcast, they're going to go out automatically, guys. So any questions or feedback or comments, Dave will stream them on the screen. We usually have a whole bunch going on the chat as well. So just wanted to remind everyone of that. So Darrell, that's good. He gets through high school and everything. He's young. In 1977, I think he's 19 years old, and he gets diagnosed with cancer. Maybe just tell us about, was there anything leading up to it? Did it happen very sudden? Was it a surprise? Was it painful? What happened to get us here?
Well, I think it's worth sharing that, Terry, after graduating from high school, he went up to Simon Fraser University. He studied kinesiology. His dream was to be a phys ed teacher. He also tried out for the JV basketball team up at SFU. No, there was no scholarship awarded to Terry. There was no invitation at all. He was a walk-on. He showed up to the first practice uninvited and to try out for the JV team. And Alex Devlin, who was the coach of the JV team at the time, who I've spoken to a number of times since, who's also a Poco resident, always starts the conversation by telling me Terry was a pathetic basketball player. He really wasn't very good. But but he overcame that with the drive and determination that Devlin says after that first practice. I knew that he would make my team. And it was during that first year of studying kinesiology and playing JV basketball that Terry discovered, a pain in his right leg, and specifically his knee. And because of his stubbornness, he decided he wasn't going to see a doctor right away. So there was something there for a few months. His focus was finishing that first year of JV basketball before having the inconvenience of having to go see a doctor. Well, that day never came because the pain got so bad that one morning when Terry tried to get out of bed and put weight on his right leg, he simply couldn't. He knew at that point this wasn't a basketball injury anymore. There was something more seriously wrong. And it was later that same day, that evening, we were gathered in a private room, the family, when Terry was told he had osteogenic sarcoma, and that his leg would have to be amputated in 6 days. And I can see it's still emotional because it's 44 years ago, but it was yesterday to me, because I could see the impact it had, not so much on Terry, but also the rest of the family. We were all just overcome, crying our eyes out. But Terry looked around at all of us. Doug was in the room as well, and realized, at this point in his life, that he had to be strong for the rest of his family. And one of the first things that Terry said was, I've always had to try my best to accomplish what I have to the age of 18. I have no idea what cancer is. I'd never heard of the word, but I can promise you I'm going to do my best to beat this disease. And that's how Terry approached cancer from that day forward. You never had a sense of what he was going through, because he hid it so well, or he tried to hide it so well. Whenever he was in pain, we never saw it because he would hide himself away in his bedroom. But we always recognized the difficulty that he was going through from the stories he shared of others when he went for chemotherapy treatments and he saw the suffering. And that had obviously a tremendous impact on Terry and the person he would evolve into.
Yeah. And the family over the next, obviously weeks and months, I guess, just tried to bound together and support him and deal with it collectively. Indeed, a very scary time. So he goes, by the time he was diagnosed, what period was it between the surgery where they amputated his leg?
Yeah, so it was 6 days later that they had the amputation, and then following that, like Terry actually thought, okay, it's now behind me. I can go on living as normal life as possible as a above knee amputee, but really that's not what cancer is all about. And it was really the 16 months of going through chemotherapy and seeing the suffering of others that had such a tremendous impact on Terry. And he made a promise that if he ever survived and made it through the chemotherapy treatments, that he would never forget those that he had left behind. And it was actually another former basketball coach, Terry Fleming, who coached at Poco High, which is now Terry Fox Senior, who was going to see Terry the night before his surgery and his amputation. And Terry was wondering Terry Fleming was wondering, what can I do? What can I offer Terry? Tomorrow he's going to have this surgery that's going to change his life forever. And so he brought Terry a copy of a Runner's World magazine. And on the cover of that Runner's World magazine was Dick Traum. And Dick Traum was an American, an above-knee amputee, and he had just finished running the New York City Marathon. And Terry said, wow, simply, if this guy can run, 26 miles on artificial leg, I need a goal. I need something to strive for. So that's what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to try and run. So Terry now had a reason and something to look forward to, a goal, but it was really the cancer that gave him the purpose. When he saw the suffering of others, he vowed again to do something to try and help them. So that's when he put the idea of this idea of running with the idea of raising money. And so the Marathon of Hope idea was born.
So he's waiting in his hotel room the night before surgery. He gets this magazine delivered to him. He sees this amputee runner that sets in motion the idea that he could do it. right, to start running. He then has to have the surgery, go through 16 or 17 months of chemotherapy, which we all know, we've all been touched by cancer, is, some of the most awful stuff, in the world. And then when he gets through the chemo and starts feeling better, he starts running. I remember when he started running training, I was telling you earlier, we used to see him run around the area, Port Coquitlam, training. And at that point, he was a relatively unknown, right? Before it was announced that he was going to be starting the Marathon of Hope. And then it was 1980 that he actually started the Marathon of Hope. Maybe tell us about that day. And you were there. I mean, it's amazing. 17. Hey, there's a rumor going around that you were driving the Marathon of Hope van and you had no driver's license.
It's not a rumor. It's actually out there now, Gary, and I'm okay with it now. I think they can't come after me at this point. In fact, the OPP was very much aware that I didn't have my driver's license. So
you were surrounded by police all day long driving this van. I've seen these pictures of you as a young kid there. Like, oh, look at this, and look at the van you guys had. I can't. So there's Darrell, guys, on the right here, and there's Terry's best friend Doug on the left, with Terry in the middle, of course. Holy smokes! So you guys decide, okay, we're actually going to do this now. Terry's feeling fairly good. He's trained, and you want to dip your toe in the Atlantic Ocean. So you drive all the way out there in order to start, or how did that work?
Well, that's a story in itself. One thing I want to share, though, that it wasn't the training was, Gary, was like, it wasn't like Terry just all of a sudden arrived on April 12th.
Right.
In St. John, and started to run. He ran over 5,000 kilometers preparing for the Marathon of Hope. He didn't run a step during the 16 months of chemotherapy. He just wasn't well enough to train. But as soon as he finished that last treatment and recovered from it, he started to train, started to run. Did he run 26 miles that first day? Not even close. He ran just one lap of a dirt track at Hastings Junior Secondary. I know it's been renamed, but that's what the name of it was. That's where I went. And after running that 400 meters, that 1/4 mile of the track, he started to question himself because it was so painful. It was so difficult to just run one lap. He couldn't fathom what it would be like to run 104 times around that track, the equivalent of a marathon. But whenever he thought of quitting, whenever the pain was intense, he needed only to remember where he was previously, going through chemotherapy and seeing the suffering of others. And running was much better and less pain than what he had, not only the pain that he had to endure, but by seeing others. So that's always what kept Terry training and running another mile. But April 12th was the start of the Marathon of Hope. I was not there. I was still at Port Coquitlam Senior Secondary in my final year of high school. So there was just the two of them, Doug and Terry, to begin the Marathon of Hope. And getting there, you mentioned, they didn't. That van was shipped there. Terry and Doug had to fly there. And it's unbelievable, the story there. And this is one that, we've been sharing more frequently as we've found out the details in the journal. It actually took Terry almost 2 full days to fly to St. John. And he stopped down in 10 cities across the country. All the flights were donated, so he had to accept, whatever he received. And he actually stopped down in 9 of the 10 provinces en route to St. John. So he was exhausted when he arrived to start the Marathon of Hope. It was quite a journey just to get there.
Crazy. So at what point did you fly out and participate and start driving that? How soon after?
Well, I didn't join up. So April 12th was the start. I joined up on May 31st. And, Terry and Doug had planned meticulously for the Marathon of Hope. They had arranged for the van. They had gas vouchers. They had running shoes and gear from Adidas. But what they didn't prepare for was what it would be like living together in a van 24 hours a day. So there was, some tension perhaps that developed between the two. And that's the reason why I was asked to join and be the third member of the Marathon of Hope, because if there wasn't, there would have been a Marathon of Hope murder. And that wouldn't have probably gone over well for fundraising. So that's why I was asked to be the third member. By the time I arrived, the issues between Doug and Terry had been resolved. And I knew that. I mean, I knew Doug, and I know Doug today. Doug is just as determined as Terry, and they were both committed to this event, and they were going to be there through thick and thin. And so, I was so excited to be part of the Marathon of Hope, because guess what? I missed a month of high school, so that's why I put up my hand.
Yeah. So there was, when you came, there's 3 of you living in the van then?
There was 3, and when I look back on it now, Gary, it's just amazing to think that there were 3 of us
It's
lived in.
It's like a 1978 Ford Econoline van or something. They're not real fancy.
They're not fancy, and there's not much space. Doug and I had the top bunk, 2 of us crammed up there, and for some reason Terry had the bigger bed below. So I always appreciated, and certainly as momentum built for the Marathon of Hope, I appreciated the donated accommodations to get away from the tight quarters, and also the smell.
Yeah.
The odor was. I think it was intent. I mean, I think it worked quite well, because it gave Terry some distance from the crowds. So I think the odor was effective in that regard.
Is that van been saved somewhere? Is it in a museum somewhere now?
Well, it's not in a museum, but it has been. I mean, that's quite an interesting story in itself. It was actually loaned to Terry, so it wasn't given to him. So after the Marathon of Hope had to end on September 1st, it was returned to London, Ontario, to a dealership there, and it was sold. And it was in the London area with 2 families for over 20 years, actually. And Bill Johnson, the son of the second owner, who lived in Vancouver, ended up with the van because his dad gave it to him, and he used it as a touring vehicle in his rock band removal. And it spent from 2000 to 2007 touring North America. And one of the first things that Bill shares when he talks about the van was that Terry was in there. Like, they could feel his presence. He knew what he had. He knew that he had Terry's van, and because it never let them down. It ended up, it had over 370,000 kilometers on it, and it was still running when we found out about it in 2007.
Yeah.
And when I became aware of it, obviously I wanted it, but because Bill had a need for it, he had some high expectations in terms of the return. He wanted a new van, and this is something that we were purchasing for the family, so obviously we had limitations there. Right. But over the course of 2007, I kept in touch, and every time I was en route to Vancouver, I'd do a bypass, because he lived close to the P&E off McGill, and I could tell at one point the insurance was about to come up, so I approached him again, and I guess he was facing a big brake bill, so he agreed to sell it to me. And my first call was to Ford of Canada, because it was a Ford vehicle, and that wasn't the best of times, if you remember, late 2007, 2008, for asking a major corp for something. But they didn't sit on it very long. They agreed to restore it, and over the next 4 months, from early January 2008 to late April, they restored the van, and now we have a brand new old 1980 Ford Econoline van.
Boy, isn't that wonderful? What a tribute. That's something that you'll want to keep forever and ever and ever. Wow. Congratulations, Darrell, on that. So Darrell, 143 days, 26 miles per day once he was rolling. Maybe walk us through a day in the life. What did every day look like? And obviously there was some typical bickering and that sort of stuff. I mean, just talk us through sort of from the time you got up to the time you finished. How arduous was this project?
It was arduous, and the days were long, because Terry didn't run as fast as an able-bodied person. 10 to 12-minute miles were what he was capable of. He could run faster, but he couldn't run 26 miles every day fast. So we were up every morning at 4:30, with Terry usually starting to run at 5 o'clock. He ran 1 mile at a time. The van was very important to the day and Terry's running, because Doug or I would drive the van exactly 1 mile ahead of Terry, and then Terry would run to the van. He'd run past the van, and then we'd start driving the van and mark the second mile. So he played leapfrog with the van all day. Every second mile would be followed by a break, a very short break, where Terry would have a drink of water or an orange. He'd run 12 miles in the morning, usually take him to about 9 o'clock. And then he would eat as much food as he possibly could, because obviously he needed to consume as much calories, carbohydrates as he could. And then he would sleep for the balance of the morning. He'd get up at 12 o'clock. Depending on how he felt, he'd run 10, 12, 14 miles in the afternoon, getting him to that 26-mile daily goal. And then the day wasn't over. I mean, I was exhausted, and I was only sitting, sleeping, driving a van. And that's the part Gary, I'm always going to struggle with, just how did he do it?
Right.
How did he get up every day, and run 42K, 26 miles every day? I don't have an answer to that, because at the end of the running portion of the day, he still had to share his story of why he was running. And obviously, as momentum built for the Marathon of Hope, the speaking engagements increased. So he might have 2 or 3 opportunities in the evening. His morning break between 9 and 12 later on was not an opportunity for him to sleep. He had to speak then. So it was extremely exhausting. But somehow, I don't know how he did it. That's the question I'll never be able to answer, is how he was able to recover and be able to get up the next morning and do it all over again. But he did it, and he did it for 143 days in a row.
Yeah, and from my understanding, he did it with a really, for the most part, positive attitude, right? Where, I think there's a lot of doubt and a lot of, questions around the ability to continue. And I mean, certainly the crowds got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And, I think from when he started to, day 143, I mean, he had amassed a massive following, and certainly that's helpful. One thing about Terry, and I think he was a natural introvert, wasn't he, Darrell? But it was, it's interesting, because I always say Terry Fox, right? The one thing that, collected the hearts of millions was his authenticity. Right? He wasn't trying to be famous. He was trying to make a difference. He was trying to raise cancer awareness. Maybe let's talk about that.
Yeah, we should talk about that, Gary, because I think that, and thank you for, referencing it and mentioning it, because I think it's so important to talk about Terry's personality, because he was an introvert. He was humble. He quickly deflected any attention given to him to others. And what I find most fascinating, and there's obviously, I'm immersed in the story every day of my life, and I can never get enough of Terry. Like that, it's never ending. But what I find most amazing, beyond what he did running wise, is that his personality did not change. The same person that started the Marathon of Hope on April 12th was the same person who stopped on September 1st. With all that fame and fortune, coming his way, he never took it in. And you see how that happens with sports personalities and those in the entertainment business, how they change, and they believe everything that they hear about themselves. Terry never did. He was that same, person from small town Poco, average person, and that's the gift, and that's the important part of this story, is that that anyone is capable of being a Terry Fox, and those giving qualities, of the unselfishness of Terry. The person who raised $24 million in 1980 did not have 2 cents to to rub together to buy Christmas gifts for his family that December of 1980. But he was rich in other ways, and that's how he saw life.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm reading a Facebook comment here, and there's so many coming on the. When you get a chance afterwards, Darrell, look at the comment section. There's so many in there. But here's one that says, "I went to Poco High with Terry and Fred. Terry was that guy with no attitude, super hardworking guy, and he never wanted accolades for anything to do with himself. What a warrior he was." And that's in high school, right? Absolutely incredible. So if you, as you look back right now, 41 years later, is there key lessons? Is there a few key lessons that stick with you that you just go like, this shaped me? These are the takeaways that really were impactful and resonated with me as his brother.
Yeah, and we've touched on them. The fact that I think for me, life is short. Like today could be my last day, so I'm always trying to get the most out of the 24 hours of a day. I hope never to take life for granted, and I appreciate what I have. I'm thinking of Terry when he talked about losing one leg. He saw it as he actually saw it as a positive. Like he would say in a strange way, I'm almost glad that I was diagnosed with cancer because it gave me a purpose. Before I had cancer, Terry would say he was a very selfish individual. The only person he thought of was Terry Fox, making the grade A basketball team, excelling up at SFU. Those were personal goals and accomplishments. He realized that his life was missing something, and that was giving back and helping other people. And that's a message that I'm still learning from, and it's an important one that we're not here for very long. And what are we doing to help other people? How are we giving back? I think that's something that we could always add to our lives, especially in what we're going through right now, is thinking of our friends and our neighbors during this very difficult time. So that's I think is the gift and the important message that I carry within me from Terry, of the many that are available.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me just sum those up because they came off your tongue very, very with such ease. The lessons that I just collected from that last piece was: life is short, never take life for granted, and let your challenges give you purpose. Absolutely beautiful, right? That could be summarized. So let's carry on. So we're going the days leading up to that horrendous day when he had to stop the Marathon of Hope in Thunder Bay on September 1st. Was there something leading up to it? Could you guys notice something in the van? Was he more tired? Was he run down? Was he complaining with pain? What happened?
I think, Gary, September 1st was a day I have difficulty with, so many years later, because it wasn't expected. That's not the way I saw it ending. But reflecting back, whenever I reflect back on the weeks preceding it, you could sense that there was something wrong. Terry obviously had his moments, and who wouldn't, based on what he was going through on a daily basis. And that's why we were there. That's why the support crew was there. That's why I, as a younger brother, was there to be there, to be a buffer during those challenging moments for Terry. But during the weeks preceding September 1st, he became very, very irritable and so much more focused. Like he was so obsessed with mileage. The mileage marker we had on the showing the distance on the van, it had to be accurate and changed immediately after he ran a mile. He wanted to know how far he'd gone at all times. But more importantly, he wanted to know how far he still had to get home. And that just didn't seem a place to be focusing when you still had 2,000 miles to go. So we, in hindsight, it'd be great to be able to have this information now, to be able to maybe try and talk to Terry at that time to suggest it might be wise to see a doctor, but knowing Terry, he wouldn't have accepted that anyways. So September 1st was quite a shock for all of us, because again, I didn't expect to fly back to BC, without Terry. And that was really hard. I remember it pretty vividly because I pulled up after what I thought was a routine water break, and Terry wasn't there, and no one knew where he was. That was the strange part, and that was very unusual. For 3 months, I knew at any given moment where Terry was, and for these brief few moments we had, I didn't know. By the time I realized and was told that he had asked to go to the hospital, and by the time I got there, it had already been confirmed that the cancer had returned and was now in his lungs. And it seemed like deja vu. It seemed like, March of 1977, and it was Terry who had already accepted it and felt that this would just give more meaning to what he just accomplished, and was already thinking about, and plotting and strategizing about how, if he could ever get out there and finish the run, he would. So, but it's a terrible day. I don't like to go to September 1st. I like to think of September 2nd and every day that's happened since, and how we've continued to further Terry's dream. That's where I like to keep my head if I can.
Yeah, it's just a very, very hard conversation to have. We appreciate you sharing that with us. There's been a lot of amazing work, done. There's been a lot of tributes. I know the foundation has always shied away from corporate sponsorships. Is that still the case today, or is that just because you didn't want to obviously water down the message? And avoid the corporate branding opportunities? You wanted to be true to the actual cause, as Terry would have wanted it to be.
That was important to Terry. He thought every dollar, again, was important to the fight against cancer. He asked for $1 from every Canadian. I think that's was incredible vision on his part to have that focus. So we want to recognize every dollar. Not just the ones and those that are capable of giving more. So that's always been our focus. Not to say that we don't have corporate support. We have tons of corporate support, and we welcome it. But we're going to treat everyone the same way. That's was Terry's thinking, and that's our thinking 41 years later.
Yeah, I've always been really supportive over the years. I've ran the race many times. Now, here's an interesting story. The first Marathon of Hope, I had just learned that year before to ride a unicycle, and I rode my unicycle on the first Marathon of Hope in the hometown run. I was picked up on national news, and the tie-in was one leg, one wheel, of course. And I didn't think of it that way. I was just a young kid riding my unicycle. I thought it would be kind of cool. So I was in that inaugural, that first run ever, riding my unicycle. David, I'd like you to put on the screen the link for anyone listening to this who wants to make a donation to the foundation, just so we know it. Darrell, I'm going to myself personally donate $10,000 as well. So
wow,
just as a thank you, right? I won't do it to corporate. I'll keep away from there. But I just think it's amazing what you guys do. I think it's amazing as a family, the siblings being involved. It's funny because to hear you speak, you're very much like your brother. I mean, all accolades are to everyone else and not to you. Sounds to me like you're the type of guy that the only time you take credit for it is when a shit show or a breakdown happens. Right? You get it all away. And that's a tremendous testament to the individual that you are. There's the donate button, guys, on the Terry Fox Foundation. Please, I encourage you guys, 41 years later. So, Darrell, I asked you off air, I said, here we are 41 years later, $850 million that has been donated. And I asked you, are we winning this war? Is it getting better? Maybe just repeat your answer.
Well, yes, we are. It'd be hard to be involved to the extent that we are as family if we didn't feel we were heading in the right direction. And we are heading in the right direction. People are living longer with cancer. They're not dying of cancer. They're not suffering as much with cancer. When I talked about Terry having 18 or 16 months of chemotherapy, he'd have 3 or 4 months of chemotherapy if he was diagnosed with osteogenic sarcoma today. There's a very good chance Terry would not have his leg amputated if he was diagnosed with bone cancer today. And there's a very good chance he would still be alive. So to me, that's exceptionally powerful, personally. I know with every loonie and toonie we raise today, we are changing lives in the future. And that's what Terry's message was to us back in 1980. We have a program called the Terry's Team program, and they're cancer survivors. And they're given a red T-shirt to symbolize the journey they've had with cancer. And the number of red T-shirts every year at a Terry Fox run continues to grow. So that's a statement to the fact that we are going in the right direction. It's Terry knew in 1980. I'm going to try and run across the country. I know that a cure is not going to come potentially as a result of whatever money I raised, but I have to try. And over time, that investment will pay off. And that's exactly what's happened. Terry knew, he had incredible vision. And I look forward to the day that we won't have to host a Terry Fox run. And I'm confident that day will one day happen.
Amen. Amen. I love quotes. I collect quotes. They mean a lot. I have tattooed quotes all over my body. I guess I'm a bit of a quote junkie or a quote nut. I want to read sort of some quotes that Terry coined all those years ago. We talked about the one already, but I want to go through them because I think that they're so transferable in business and in life. And the first one is, I want to try the impossible to show it can be done. And I think that he certainly lived up to that, just a nondescript, regular family young man fighting hard, trying to do anything to the best of his ability, and really, truly created a legacy all these years later, a true legacy, not just somebody saying, I want to leave a legacy. He actually did it. And what'd you call them? You called them Fox fans or the Foxers, the Terry Foxers. You have a term.
Terry Foxers.
Yeah. Darrell, it's really important for you to hear this, but just the 20 minutes we spoke before we kicked off this call, to hear you talk, about the Foxers and about everyone else in the community that's made this happen. I said, I want to thank you. And you said, thanks, but no thanks, Gary. It's not about me. It's about the Foxers. Right. And the guys like David Teixeira that have been there for many years and helped put these things on. You, as much as your brother, and the Foxers are as much of an inspiration as Terry was all these years later. And I'm a spiritual guy, and I bet you he's looking down on every one of these interviews and he's saying, that's my bro. You know what I mean? That's a pretty cool place to be. The next thing I want to read, the next quote, it says, I want to set an example that will never be forgotten. Safe to say he's done that. Any comments?
Wow. I mean, I love Terry quotes. I mean, how many times have I read them, thought about them over the years? And it never is. That's what's so incredible about the story, Gary. It doesn't, over time, it doesn't fade. It's still powerful. It's still inspiring. So when you read, I want to set an example that'll never be forgotten. Yeah. That is exceptionally powerful for someone who's only 21 years old to be saying that. It's just amazing. I'm so lucky to be in this position. That's why I really, really glad you mentioned, I don't deserve. The only reason why I'm talking to you right now is because I have the same last name. That's it. Like, you mentioned Dave Teixeira and all the Terry Foxers. They are the reason why the legacy is so vibrant. I'm just a brother who happened to be given this incredible gift of witnessing this miracle, in 1980, and am able to talk about it 41 years later. And you give me this platform to do so. So they deserve all the credit for the $850 million.
Well, I love that song that was written, and I can't escape me right now. Dave will tell me in 1 second, but that song, "He's My Brother," that has been played many times over the years in many different usages, but I always associate it with with the Fox family and Terry. The last quote that he had was, "It's got to keep going without me." It was interesting because he did this thing and raised 24 million that first year, but for him, it was so important for him to say, "This is not about me. This is about cancer research, and this is about all of you. And please help me, carry that legacy on." Again, he's certainly done that. Any comments on how Terry thought about that?
Yeah, it was, it was so important to him. I mean, that when he was forced to stop his run, that's how he thought. He knew the run had to continue without him. So he's already planting the seed that the baton must be shared. It better keep going. And it has kept going because Canadians recognize that it should keep going. So, that's a testament to, again, Terry Foxers across the country that have continued this mission and this vision of funding cancer research so alive and so vibrant.
Yeah. So there's been conversations over the years, and I don't know if the Fox family is or the foundation is supportive of it or not, but there's been this whole push last year. I know, David, you were really involved in it, in the Fox Fiver, and there's been a lot of conversations. A friend of mine, one of our office owners, Gabe Hoffert, actually sent me a message yesterday in anticipation and said, "I'm sick and tired of waiting for the YVR to be changed to the Terry Fox Airport." He goes, "This Trudeau Airport and Pearson Airport, what the heck? Why isn't it Terry Fox Airport?" And although that might not have been important to Terry, it is another way to educate and to build on that legacy. Has there been any real conversations about either of those initiatives over the years?
Well, there's always been conversation, Gary. I can share. And you're right. You mentioned that Terry wouldn't be pushing for it, and so that's we try and think like Terry thought. That's he leads us. He's not here, but he's still our lead. And he didn't want recognition. Now the $5 bill. So, the family's thinking is consistent with Terry's, that it's not something we're going to be actively pushing for because Terry wouldn't want it. But because there's certainly a fundraising opportunity there with it, obviously we would be delighted if it were to happen. But again, we followed Terry's lead. He didn't want recognition. He didn't want buildings named after him. He didn't want awards. And that's what's so fascinating about what's happened over the last 41 years is because the foundation has not been a vehicle to push for these things. They've happened because people out there make it happen. And that's the best way. Rather than have an identity with our network, try and push for recognition, it happens the right way because Canadians out there want to see it happen. And if it happens with the $5 bill, if the airport is renamed because there's a push out there because people want it to happen, then we will obviously welcome it if it were to happen. But that's been our approach, and that'll be our approach going forward as well.
Yeah, well, listen, I as I said, I've been in many runs over the years, but there's also many years I haven't been in the runs. And you know why, Darrell? I always know they're happening because it's so large in my hometown, Port Coquitlam. But many years I've go, oh my God, I'm too tired, and it's raining out, right? And I look back now after spending this hour with you today, and shamefully, I'm very sorry because when I read Terry's quotes and just try. The fact that, I let my mind say no to keep me on the couch because it's raining out and I didn't show up. That's not going to happen again. I'll be on all these runs going forward. It's really important. It's just a great reminder, that guys, we can try and we're capable of so much more. And, even when it hurts, you have to, left foot in front of the right foot and push forward. You have been a spectacular guest. It's just such a privilege. You know what? It's a privilege for me to get to know you because it's funny, over all these years, we've never had a conversation before today. And, what town are you living in now? Where do you live now? I'm
out in the WAC. I'm in Chilliwack.
Oh, you're in Chilliwack. You're in the WAC. Okay.
Gary, I just want to say this is a really unusual process to go through to get a mortgage. But anyways, I hope I'm successful.
Well, we'll take very, very good care of you when you're looking for that mortgage. You make sure that you text me personally, and I'll look after that for you. I really want to say on behalf of, we have a sponsor that helps us out with this program, First National Financial, great partners. We just love them dearly. They've been so supportive of the broker community. They got some of the best staff in the Canadian country. So to all the gang at First Nat, thanks guys. We love you. We appreciate the good work. And to all of our viewers that tune in, we've been trying to, really mix this between sort of personal and impactful interviews and business leaders and authors. But I think today, some of the lessons that I've took away are so transferable in business. I feel like this has been unbelievably valuable for all of us, especially me, and to you, Darrell, and please pass it on to the rest of your family, but to all of the, sort of Foxers out there and all of those who have continued supported this initiative and kept it alive 41 years later. Amen. I take my hat off to you. I'm so proud of you guys. And I can't possibly thank you enough for the amazing good work that you do.
Thank you, Gary. Really enjoyed the hour. Gosh, felt like 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, it goes good. I'm just going to wrap up, guys, with just a couple of promo pieces. Guys, in 2 weeks, I have my dear friend, Joe Roberts. Joe Roberts went from many, many, many years in the downtown Vancouver East Side. He went from Skid Row heroin user to CEO to pushing a shopping cart across Canada, pushing for change. He's a wonderful guy with a wonderful story. Looking forward to having Joe. And then, guys, April 19th, I'm actually starting a new series, just CEO to CEO. And I'm going to bring CEOs from all different industries just head on and just learn lessons from the CEOs in businesses. Some are going to be our business. Some are going to be businesses out of the U.S., but we're going to look for their very best practices, what they've done to attract and build the very best companies, their social initiatives, what drives them, how they manage people, how they hire people. So really looking forward. Again, guys, as always, this is not a DLC, MCC, or MA podcast. This is an industry podcast. Anyone who you think should be on this podcast, send them the link, send them the invite. If you have realtors, referral partners, anybody that you would like to be part of this Level Up series, or if you're just one of the thousands of users that are clicking on one of our social media channels that are listening in on these programs, we thank you very much. We welcome every single one of you. For us, I've always said to a lot of people, the more you give, the more you get. It's just, give unconditionally, help other people get to what they want, and amazing things happen. Karma is a very, very powerful initiative. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to thank David, my production team, Tara, and everybody else. This will be uploaded on Spotify, guys, and wherever else my team uploads these. And one last chance to give Darrell a salute. Read the book, guys. Darrell, thank you. Forever Terry, a legacy, right? In the letters from a lot of powerful people. Can't wait. See you soon. And thanks again, Darrell.
Thank you. Thanks.